You're listening to the Mediascope show with Ellen Gunning on 103.2 Dublin City FM.
Welcome back. I'm chatting with Professor Ed Lourdan, PR Professor at Westchester University in Pennsylvania, and we're talking all things President Trump, media and public relations. Ed, I wanted to pick you up on who do we allow in, how do we determine who is a journalist? One of the issues for the White House press corps, I suppose, is that people that the press corps, and this may be a snobby thing as well, said she who is also a journalist, but it may be a snobby thing that journalists like to believe that journalists have a certain background, they have a certain training, that's what makes them genuine journalists. Bloggers and others would maintain that their job is equally as valid. It may be street journalism or citizen journalism, but it's equally as valid. We haven't seen before a press corps which is as mixed as the press corps that's in the White House accredited list at the moment. And that's very much, I think, a reflection of who the president wants writing about him rather than anything else.
I would agree, and there's very little subtlety in the result of this. I think what you just said is absolutely accurate. But the outcome of this, in terms of the kinds of questions that the president gets, are just really, I mean, the White House press corps is sort of there's an elite component to that. These are veteran reporters; they know what they're doing, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes somebody asking a question that's sort of like, President Trump, are you the greatest president or just a great president? And you're like, who is asking that? What kind of question is that?
Is this serious journalism? How do we define serious? Yeah.
Yeah, or they'll press bash within their question. They'll say, President Trump, we recognize that you haven't received fair press so far, and people look at each other going, who is this person? And how do I not know them? I've been in this press corps for 10 years, and here comes some punk walking in here and bashing the press as part of his question. You can see where people get upset, not just because there's somebody new in the room, but because they're moving into this level of questioning that's just nonsensical.
It's actually non-journalistic, to be fair, because the journalist's job is to be, I suppose, argumentative is probably the wrong word, but the journalist's job is to question, to report, to be fair, to be balanced, to be accurate. And it's certainly, you can't begin by saying, isn't it true that, are you the greatest or just a great? It doesn't add to any kind of credibility, journalistic credibility. I suppose it does. It sort of segues us off into another area, though, which is this whole idea, and you touched on it earlier, about telling the truth. And this idea of an alternative truth or an alternative fact. I know when I was a child anyway, there was the truth and then an alternative fact was called a lie. There were no alternative facts. It was either true or it was false. It raises a huge issue for media if you have people who are spinning in the worst sense of the word and saying, no, that's not actually, that's an alternative truth. How do media actually deal with it? Because you have a very divided audience receiving the message. You have people who believe that the media is for President Trump and people who believe that the media is against him, and then you have people in the middle who just want to know what's going on. How does the media actually handle the whole alternative facts, alternative truth issue, do you think, Ed?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one that people have been asking a lot. One of our famous politicians, actually an Irishman, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was former senator of New York, he said, you are entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own set of facts. And people have started to grasp, they've started to cling to this and say there is a specific set of facts out there that really, are the basis for our discussion. Look, leaders lie. Prime Minister Andy Kenny has had a couple of whoppers that we know of. Obama said his "you keep your own doctor" thing. Presidents and prime ministers. They
I don't know, Ed, that we could call that lie. I think they were offering us alternative versions of the truth.
Well, that phrase really struck with people when she said alternative facts. That really struck with people, and then they said, and a lot of press people stopped right there and said, that's not alternative facts, that's lies.
But actually, the point that you were making, Daniel Patrick Moynihan's point, is very fair, that you are entitled to your opinion and you debate your opinion. And as you said earlier, it's like a sunny day or it's a bit cloudy. It's an opinion, it's a debate. We're not actually arguing about the fact that it's not raining, which is a fact. It either rains or it doesn't rain. How do media actually explain to a cynical public that the alternative facts are not actually alternative facts, they're lies?
Well, if I can bring this out to just for a second to a more sort of philosophical level. There's been a debate over the last decade in this country about the role of the press and the function of the press. And with the introduction of Fox News has presented things as we are fair and balanced, and the rest of the news is something else. And there has always been considered, or the last couple of decades, there's considered to be a central media as well as some fringe media on the left and right. There's liberal media and conservative media, but the centerpiece of the media, the CBSs and NBCs and New York Times and CNNs and things like that, they're sort of like the regular news. Then there's the sort of slanted news. Well, in the last couple of years, Fox and Trump and people like that have argued the position that there's either right-wing or left-wing, that all of it is bias. And this plays into the idea of, well, you have your set of facts and we have our set of facts. And it's very, very disconcerting. It's very, very damaging to consider that all news, or to take the framing that, well, maybe we're a little bit biased, but you're a little bit biased. Everybody's a little bit of bias. And it's very frightening in terms of understanding the idea that that 2 and 2 does actually equal 4, that we should sort of come to that conclusion. So that's playing into, and Trump is just exacerbating that idea that, well, you say 2 and 2 equals 4, I say 2 and 2 equals 5. We both have our opinions on that. It's like, no, that's not what's going on here. That's not what it is. And a lot of these, again, are demonstrably false. It's not. Everybody, politicians stretch the truth to their advantage, but they don't go that far. The PRSA president here issued a statement saying, we do not say untruths. She thought it was significant enough, important enough that she had to say, we don't say things that are factually incorrect. So
which is a position that PR people would take the world over, that we may be responsible for telling you not to look on the right-hand side, to look on the left, which at its kindest is a definition of spinning, is I'll deflect your attention, but you certainly don't lie. Do you know what I'm just wondering as I'm listening to you? Fox News, was it really all their fault that nobody called out Fox News when they started, that media didn't say, actually Fox News shouldn't have the word news attached to the word Fox?
There's studies that indicate that heavy Fox News viewers are not just less educated, not just less well versed in terms of major events. They're factually incorrect. They believe a lot of things that are factually incorrect that have been told them by Fox News, things like that. So it's a frightening group. But you have to understand, it's an important part of this, as I'm sure there are elements of this in Ireland as well. There are a lot of frustrated, angry people in the United States, and their level of frustration allows them to say, these people agree with me, and I don't quite care if they're right all the time. I care that they agree with me. And that position has caused a lot of harm. It's caused a lot of harm. There were some people in this country, a lot of people just thought there is no way Donald Trump can possibly get elected. And yet there are perfectly pleasant people, very frustrated people who are saying, I will not continue to support the government the way it is. Things have to change. So those kind of people are susceptible to or ripe for this kind of message that the government lies to you and you've been getting hosed the whole time. And there's just a lot of anger here. It makes me very sad to say it, but that leads itself to accepting a lot of untruths.
But it's throughout the United States, as you say, but it's throughout Europe as well. And there is a disconnect at its kindest. There is a disconnect between politics and the people that the politicians represent. And that's what leads to a lot of, I suppose, voting for people who are just not the establishment. So it's trying to give some message back. What I found myself wondering, though, when I was listening to you was, I can't remember a situation before, but that may just be my ignorance, where people actually took to the streets in support of a president who was there, who wasn't under attack other than from the media, if that's the perception of it. I mean, you've had earlier in March, you had the pro-Trump rally in Berkeley, California, which turned quite violent. I think you had 7 or 8 people injured. More recently, you had a march in Balsa Chica, State Beach in California, again, where 3 or 4 people were injured. These were people who were marching in favour of a president who is legally elected. I don't actually understand why they're even marching in his favour, but there are people who then choose to march against them. Is that a first for the United States, or did I miss something similar happening before?
We've had protests in the past. We haven't had a protest in the past where on Inauguration Day, the day after Inauguration Day, more people come out against the president than come out for him. That's new stuff. we're at sort of fever pitch in that regard, and that's highly problematic. These folks they feel under siege. This guy speaks to them on a gut level. Keep in mind, for 5 years in his rise in politics, he held the position that the President of the United States was foreign-born, and he rose on a lie. He made his bones on a lie. And if you poll the United States people right now, there's a sizable percentage who consider Barack Obama to be foreign-born, even though he's got birth certificates, et cetera, et cetera. So this level of sort of whipping people up and going to their gut, one of the things that people say about Trump all the time is, I like him because he speaks the truth. He says what he feels. It's so ironic that a guy who lies this much, that one of his primary strengths to his supporters is he speaks the truth. What he speaks something different than what is traditional, and for those folks, they say he speaks the truth.
Do you know it's a strange thing? I don't think it's so much that they believe he speaks the truth. Maybe they do, but I think what he does is he speaks in a language that politicians don't normally use. I think there's a whole debate around the fact that politicians spend so much time learning a language which obfuscates, which allows them an opportunity to negotiate or to find angles and wedges, and that's part of what they do. But it alienates people who can't figure out what they're saying. So if you have somebody like President Trump who says, even if it's a blatant lie, if he says something, they say, I know what he's talking about, I understand him, I can hear it. So I think on one level, the message they're giving back to politicians is, please simplify the language that you use. Please reconnect with people in a language that they can understand so that they actually do know where you're coming from.
Very true, very true. Sadly, the thing that he's connecting on frequently is anger. It's anger against immigrants. It's anger against the other. But he does speak to that level. And keep in mind, he is also, there's a huge contrast between him and the guy who was before him, in that Obama was very cool when the no drama Obama thing. He was very. I don't want to say calculating in a judgmental way, but you could tell he chose his words very carefully and thoughtfully. And he was sort of a cerebral kind of person. All those characteristics are not words you would use to describe Trump. And if you didn't like Obama, then that kind of fire, that hot level that Trump goes with, people are saying that yes, this guy's actually being honest. A weird thing that a number of people said about Trump is that when he says these things that are 2 and 2 equals 5 things, he believes them. That if you hooked him up to a lie detector, he would pass the lie detector test.
I have to tell you, not only do I believe that he believes them, I find it fascinating that when you interview people, they say, I know he's trying to do X, I know he can't achieve it, but he's trying. So they support him for the effort of trying. Ed Lourdan, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I thoroughly enjoyed that chat. I sincerely hope we'll have an opportunity to come back to you again, maybe in 6 or 8 months' time, and get another insight. For now, Ed Lourdan, PR Professor at Westchester University, Pennsylvania, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
My pleasure, Ellen.
Now, that's all I have for you for this week. If you have information you'd like to share with listeners, or you have a good story to tell, then send us an email to mediascope@dublincityfm.ie. And don't forget, you can hear podcasts of this and previous Mediascope programmes on www.irishacademy.com. I'm Ellen Gunning. Sound this week was by Fergal Daly. My special guest was Ed Lourdan, and thanks to you for being with me today. I look forward to the pleasure of your company at the same time next week. So until then, goodbye.